further on, so here's the deck of cards, and the thing about the feeling in the military community was that this was a complete mistake, because it wound up in, as they said, chasing a deck of cards, where you have the whole army apparently tasked with chasing a deck of cards, which is not the mission. I mean, the mission was apparently to erase the regime. Oh, there he is, Tony Blair. Yeah, right. Oh God, Tony Blair. How could I have forgotten? I purged it from my mind. It was so awful to watch this guy. It was just so smooth. He was just such a consummate liar. Well, yeah, anyway, he was just, everything he said was a lie, whatever. So here's the deck of cards, which you've now seen. And Saddam's saying the ace of spades, the military's deck of cards, illustrating what it is. So, okay, so now here's the Globe and Mail. Now, what is the Globe and Mail doing using this deck of cards as an example, basically, of the people you're capturing or you're showing? Why not just put in pictures of the enemy? No, they want to show that, you know, this is essentially the way the United States represents them. It's like, well, why not discuss this as a piece of propaganda? Well, the Globe gets even worse if you think, well, yeah, that's not so hot. I'm not, yeah, it's not so great. Well, look down further. Look here. Down below me now is this list, this little bar graph of the 55 at a glance, you know, captured, in custody, killed, still missing, surrendered. Can you imagine if, let's say, I don't know, in the Syrian war, they were after a bunch of Canadian soldiers, and they said, you know, we've got 75 Canadians out there running around, you know, with here they are at a glance, you know, we've killed these many. It's like, what? We'd say, well, what kind of way is that to represent the enemy? That's against the Geneva. We would be all very upset about that, because after all, it's the human life. Do they not value human lives? Well, this is Canadian. Nobody asked the Globe and Mail to do this. Somebody at the Globe decided this was a good idea. Hey, hey, Charlie, how should we represent those people who are running around in Iraq? It's like, let's do a bar graph. It's like, yeah, perfect. Yeah, let's do that. So then, when they caught Saddam, as I say, they caught him in what they called a spider hole, a bolt hole. Basically, it was just a place to hide. And they said he was caught like a rat. Oh, like a rat, you know, not like a human being, like a rat, because your enemy is a rat. Your enemy is not a human being. And if you can reduce them, remember, to not being human, then you can pretty much do anything to them you like. Okay, so then I just want to sort of remind us of like where we've been before, because the Russians dealt with Hitler as a rat in the wall. And this concept of the enemy as a rat is a really old one. And it shows up and shows up and shows up in the propaganda, in the visual propaganda, of which this one that's probably on this side, I'm not sure, but it should be on that side, is one. These are, as I indicate down below, that at least will stay the same. Down below stays down below. These are ad hominem attacks. That is, they attack the person that is involved. So, is this specifically against the Iraqi people? No, it's specifically against Saddam. Therefore, it's to the person, right? To the. Sometimes you'll hear ad personam, because there's an attempt to clean up the Latin, so that it's not. Again, the reason I leave it as an ad hominem attack is that these are patterns that are recognizable, and so even if in this case, it's just gendered. It's a gendered pattern, we still recognize it as being an ad hominem attack. Okay, so but you may hear ad personam. Okay, as long as it gets the job done, that's fine with me. If the whole world shifts over to ad personam, that's fine. I'm for it. Okay, so what about an ad populum attack? What would that look like? Well, it would look like this, because the ad populum attack is you're after everybody, right? You're after the whole population. You're not just after one person, the bad guy. You think the whole population is bad news. And in this case, I'm going back to the Vietnam War to sort of make a bridge here to show you that there is a history to these things. So these are what are called Vietnam death cards. And you see this again in Apocalypse Now. Kilgore, when they first meet Kilgore and the first Cav with all the helicopters, have just finished an operation, and they are, and Kilgore, the colonel, opens a deck of cards, and he starts looking through the deck of cards, and he says there isn't even one ace in the deck, and he's like, here, there's an 8 for you, and these are decks of cards that were printed, and you can see a really excellent condition. This one above me here has obviously not been used ever. These would be issued to the 1st to the 9th, the Air Cavalry. And they were left at the scene by the Cav. So if the Cav, say, took out a village, and then landed, they would put death cards on everybody to indicate we were here. Now, this is something that they got from psychological operations and eventually the CIA. So this concept of these sorts of death cards are really new. Sorry, pardon me, are not new at all, which is why it's intriguing to see the United States go back to it essentially in 2001. Okay, so here's the gunfighters, dealers in death. So the same kind of thing. You know, you go into the battlefield, you leave a bunch of bodies, you leave cards on the bodies, basically as your calling card. The one below me is perhaps one of the smarter of the two. It's not as graphically striking as the other two, but it is in Vietnamese, which is like, yeah, you would think that you would do that. This is an attack against the whole population, where you're rendering the whole population as, it isn't just that you're going to kill them, but then you're going to leave your calling card, which says basically, you want to know who did it? We did it. Compliments of the Strike Force Widowmakers. Okay. To what extent is that also an appeal to force? Well, it is an appeal to force. And the question then comes up is like, can an appeal to force and ad populum be the same? You know, can one thing be two? It's like, absolutely. You know, can one thing be an appeal to force and at the same time an attack on a population? Yes. It's usually more of one than the other. But all we need is one reason to throw the thing out, right? And it's not a good argument. It's a fallacy, right? All we need is one of these. We're like, okay, that's it. We don't need two. So one is good enough. So here are some famous images from the Vietnam War. And again, so up above me are some, was a boiled skull, I guess, just one of them, yeah. I'm trying to remember that the rest of that picture. So this would be presumably an enemy's skull. We don't know that though. Could just be the skull of a person that they, somebody hacked their head off. There's a body lying in a field. They hacked the head off and boiled it in lye, and then put a boonie hat on it. That's what this is called, which is Welcome to Cav Country. This is again as the Air Cav with a Ranger badge that's been called a tab, Ranger tab, that's been stitched onto the cap. And on the other side is this image of the two dead Vietnamese. No idea whether they're soldiers, whether they're South Vietnamese, North Vietnamese. We have no idea. I have no idea. There's no. We don't really know about many of these pictures. There were millions of pictures taken, and many of them are of dubious provenance. Anyway, here's a soldier who is covering his eyes for any number of reasons. Maybe that he's, who knows? Yeah, again, can't say. But what I've circled here is the Tropic Lightning patch, which has been put over the face of the dead soldier. Now, again, this is a sort of calling card. The Tropic Lightning patch is the 25th Infantry, I think. Tropic Lightning was one of the major divisions that did a lot of the fighting in Vietnam. So in this case, the patch probably would have been taken off a sleeve and put on this person's face because the photographer was there and was going to take a picture, right? So this is the kind of thing that Pear talks about, where the presence of the photographer creates a photo opportunity, basically, and that makes history of a certain kind. Here's another one. Here's the back of one of these cards, which has a very common sort of little mantra. Those who kill for pleasure are sadists. Those who kill for money are professionals. Those who kill for both are gunslingers. I've seen Green Berets, Rangers. I mean, you name it. Like whatever, sort of like fill in the blank. You're a unit here, basically. These are appeals to force, where again, it's not just about, these are less about reducing the enemy uh, to a thing and more about displaying your power over the enemy. Okay, so these are some of the ways that you can use the things we looked at just recently